You ever feel like you're trying to drink from a fire hose when you check the news? I mean, it is just relentless. To show you just how packed our world has become, we're going to do something a little different today. We are going to unpack a single 10-minute late-night monologue and see just how many massive news stories can be crammed inside.
So really, how much can you fit into 10 minutes? Well, it turns out, a whole lot. This wasn't just a few jokes, you know? It was a wild, rapid-fire ride through a government shutdown, some pretty tense foreign policy stuff, and even a federal investigation. So, let's see how it all got woven together.
All right, so here's our game plan. We've broken this thing down into 5 key moments. We're going to start with the shutdown and how it hit real people, then jump to a really surprising policy disagreement, then over to some drama with Canada, then we'll dive into a tense hearing, and we'll finish up with a masterclass in how to deny something without actually denying it.
Okay, first up, the shutdown. The monologue didn't kick things off with some boring policy talk. Nope, it went straight for the heart, focusing on the federal workers who were caught right in the middle of it all.
The basic problem was laid out right away. You have hundreds of thousands of people, essential employees like air traffic controllers, who have to show up to work. The catch? They weren't getting paid. And this wasn't just some abstract issue, right? It had immediate effects. The monologue pointed to this one specific example out of Burbank Airport. The controllers go home, and suddenly, flight delays are averaging 2.5 hours. Ouch.
And here's the contrast that the monologue really hammered home. While the essential folks, like the air traffic controllers, weren't getting paid a dime, the members of Congress who were actually debating the shutdown, they were still getting their full paychecks.
So then, when the president was asked if all these workers would get their back pay when this was all over, this was the quote that the monologue highlighted. It pretty directly implies that in his opinion, some of those federal employees just didn't deserve to be taken care of.
And just like that, boom, the monologue completely switches gears. We go from this massive government-wide crisis to a conflict happening inside a single political party, and it's all about healthcare.
The monologue zoomed right in on this moment. You've got a Republican representative who publicly breaks with her party on a huge budget vote. And why? It wasn't about some grand political theory. It was because her own kids' insurance premiums were about to double. That made it personal.
Okay, so the lens pulls back again. We go from domestic policy to international relations, focusing on a really tense meeting between the US and Canada that was about trade, and some pretty surprising claims.
So the main point of tension was this new 35% tariff on Canada. And the official reason given for it? It was supposedly to stop the flow of fentanyl coming across that northern border.
But, and this is a big but, the monologue immediately hits back at that reason with this stat. Of all the fentanyl seized at the U.S. border the year before, only a teeny tiny fraction, 0.2%, actually came from Canada. The monologue also brought up this list, which was apparently presented as a kind of vision for what would happen to America under different leadership. And you got to admit, it drew some special attention to that last item, windmills all over the place.
Next, we pivot again, from international policy to this super tense moment in a Senate hearing. The focus is now on the Attorney General's testimony, and one particularly sharp question.
So, during this hearing, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse asks this incredibly direct question. There are reports that Jeffrey Epstein had these photos of Trump. Did the FBI ever find them?
And the Attorney General's answer? Well, it wasn't a yes or a no. Instead, like the monologue pointed out, she accuses the senator of slander. It was a classic move, the non-denial denial.
And that leads us to our final piece of the puzzle. And this is where the monologue gets incredibly detailed. It's like a forensic analysis of a letter that President Trump has absolutely fiercely denied writing.
So here it is, the denial. But listen closely to how it's phrased. The argument wasn't just, "That's not my signature." It was very specific. "That's not my language." The claim is that the words, the phrases, they just don't sound like him. And this is where the monologue basically said, "Oh, really? Let's check the tape." It took 5 phrases from that letter and put them side by side with things the president has actually said in public. And you can see for yourself, the similarities are pretty striking. I mean, one of them is literally identical.
And there you have it, 5 huge, complicated news stories, all jammed into one 10-minute performance. It's really the perfect snapshot of our modern news diet, isn't it? And it leaves you with this one really big question. In a world that is so saturated with information, how do we even begin to tell the difference between what's real policy and what's just part of the show?